as the war between Trump and DeSantis heats up in the Republican Party, I can literally see a repeat of the 1912 election. Now, I did a podcast on that election back in June last year. I put a link to it in the bottom of my description because that's the most amazing election we've ever had in our history. But here's the similarities for me. So back then, you had the 26th president was Teddy Roosevelt. In 1908, he decided not to run again, even though legally he could. And William Howard Taft pretty much was his handpicked successor. Taft won the Republican primary easily, goes on to win the general election, becomes our 27th president. But they had a falling out. And so Roosevelt decided, you know what? I don't want him to be president again, so I'm going to run against him in the Republican primary. Mad. This is where the similarities begin between Roosevelt and Trump. So in the primary, Taft squeaks by Roosevelt. Now, I can see that happening in the 2024 Republican primary. I can see DeSantis just barely getting enough votes to defeat Trump in the Republican primary. Now, what did Roosevelt do? He started what was called the Bull Moose Party. It was a third-party candidacy because he was mad at the whole process and determined to bring everybody down. And by the way, I know you can't see Trump being called a bull moose. No, of course not. He probably would have the bull in the China shop party. But regardless, you see the similarities. In the campaign, and by the way, Roosevelt was called the Bull Moose Party because he was literally shot while campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and still gave the speech with a bullet in his body and bleeding. And he made the comment, it's going to take more than this to kill a bull moose. So thus the name for the party. Again, I can see Trump all over this. Now, in the general election in 1912, as you could imagine, Taft and Roosevelt split the Republican vote. Now, in the total, they had well over 50% together. But this made it possible for Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat, with only 40% of the popular vote, to become our 28th president. Tell me you can't see that happening in 2024. Because listen, Trump's going to get 25% of the vote no matter what. The only question is, can he get more votes than Roosevelt got, the most popular third-party candidate in our history? And that's probably what he would talk about. So Joe Biden will be our president in 2024. And listen, if he does win the presidency, if he makes it to the end, he will be 86 years old. I propose we completely repeal the 22nd Amendment, temporarily at least. That's what sets, 2 terms as a limit for president, so he can serve again. I want him to be president as long as he can suck oatmeal through the straw. And why? Because I want, at some point, my entire old life, I've watched the government and bureaucracies get bigger year after year. Maybe when Biden's in his 90s, maybe people will begin to say, you know what? Maybe I don't want to give more power to the government. But 1912, hey, it's going to come back to haunt us.